Okay, so let's begin talking about deployment. Now, deployment's a little bit tricky in the sense that it's actually sort of a mix between two different things. And what do I mean by this? What I mean is that deployment happens in a time space after testing, after building. So it happens sort of at the very end of the life cycle. However, in the building phase, deployment is a lot of times taken into account during implementation, during the actual building of the project. And that's because a lot of times with deployment, what we have is it needs to have some sort of implementation created for it. So maybe we have to code the project just a little bit differently. Maybe we have to set up an extra server. We have to set up some backup areas, and all of that stuff, it happens in the implementation phase. So that's why a lot of times both computer engineering and I like to think of deployment within that implementation sphere, because the only way that you get the good deployment is if you build it into the project itself. And so that's very important, is that deployment a lot of times needs to be planned out and it needs to be executed within the coding of the app. And we're not talking here about a sort of a beta deployment or just, sending it out to some internal testers or anything like that. We're talking about the final deployment. What I mean by that is it's the one where we have the project and it's actually going to go out to the end users over here. So it's going to be the final product that is paid for, that people are going to use. And that is where we need to have a plan. We need to have a plan for a couple of different reasons. The first major reason is we don't want to break things. We maybe this is 1.0, and in that case we don't have to really think about rollback because we're kind of releasing the product. So if there's a problem with it, the only rollback that we can do, the only way that we can go backwards is to stop offering the product, and that doesn't usually make sense. But what we really need to make sure of is if we're going from like this 1.0 and we're upgrading to 2.0. Now this is where this idea of retreat comes in, the rollback, the revert. If we are deploying, we don't want to break everything. If we have, for example, we're running 1.0 over here. 1.0 might be making the company some money right now. 1.0 is getting us profit. We just are trying to upgrade it to 2.0 because we think it'll be better. It'll draw in more customers and we'll make more money at the bottom line here. So we want to upgrade to 2.0. The problem here exists if an error comes up. During this phase, something that we didn't expect comes up. Well, now, not only are we not making money from 1.0, 2.0 didn't come out either. So we now have no product we're offering, and every second this is down, we're losing money. Imagine if Amazon.com, imagine the giant marketplace that Amazon is. Imagine if it goes down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. How much money do you think they would lose from just those little periods of downtime? So in those situations, an idea of rollback is very important. And the idea of rollback just kind of comes into, we don't know, we think it's going to make it through, but we're preparing for at any step it to fail. And if it fails at any of those steps, either our program or the person running the upgrade will know exactly what to do. There'll be a plan so that it can roll back and go right back to 1.0, and then we'll fix it later and try again later. That is the thing that we need to basically plan out the most, is have that plan in place so that when something goes wrong, it isn't completely and totally unexpected. An error pops up and we're like, okay, there's an error. We didn't anticipate this. Let's roll it back to 1 and we'll figure it out. So it goes back over to 1, we start making our money again, and we figure out what exactly is going wrong to get it up to 2. And this level of planning sort of directly relates to how the deployment affects the overall project. So is it a small update, a large update, or a complete overhaul? In this situation, we're talking about a complete overhaul. So we need every single situation covered so that no matter what, there will be a product at the end of this rollback. If we're talking about a very tiny update, maybe we're changing the color of a button somewhere, we probably don't need to come up with a giant rollback plan for this. There's not a lot that can go wrong. It's just a tiny HTML document update. And maybe the only plan we have is to just save the old one in a little backup folder and then execute it, and if something goes wrong, just swap it back in. It's really, really simple. And that's, that would be exactly a really small update. But when we get to those larger updates, there might be hundreds of files changing. There might be thousands. There might be new databases that are coming online, new communication lines, new control flows. And we need to make sure that if in the middle of this, it's building and we have this one going up and then it crashes right here, what happens? Do we delete this and delete this, go back all the way just to the 1? Is there some like backup server that has 1.0 running? And so we just kind of take this server, destroy it, and then just sort of switch all of the traffic over to the server which works. A lot of different things we can go over, and that's what we're going to be going over in deployment.